Something people love to say about cars is that they all look the same these days. Now, whether or not you agree with that sentiment or not, it's not something you could ever accuse the Renault Avantime of. Introduced in 2001 in Europe, 2002 in the UK, this MPV coupe really looked like nothing else on the road. And nearly 20 years later, that's still the case. There really were no competitors to the Renault Avantime, and that's still the case today. Back in the day, it was reviewed against Mercedes CLK in Top Gear magazine. Now, whilst the CLK is also a pillarless coupe like the Avantime, obviously that's a low-slung sports car, not an MPV. So whether or not anyone would have seriously considered the two is something I'm not so sure about. But what the Avantime is really known for is its unusual looks, those amazing long double-hinged doors, and the grand air mode, where with the single press of one button, all the windows drop down and the sunroof opens. And this is really where the Avantime is in its element. Now I'm going to close the windows on the sunroof because I'm not really sure if you'll be able to hear me with all the wind noise, as I don't have one of those nice fluffy mics. So, what is the Avantime like to drive? Well, I've always considered that it's not really what an Avantime is about. Obviously, if you want a really good driving car, you do not opt for an MPV, coupe or not. What the Avantime is really about is drifting along on a lovely summer's day with the windows down. Countryside, you can just come in, you've got lovely panoramic views all around. You can open the sunroof. You're basically in a convertible, but then with the press of a button you can pop all the windows back up, close the sunroof and be on the motorway and cruise in lovely peace. One of the things I really noticed about the Avantime is, despite its age, it's actually a really quiet car. You don't get an awful lot of road noise, really little wind noise. You get a little bit of squeaking from the sunroof because I've just opened it, but usually it's not quite so bad. So you can just cruise along peacefully. You can always pose with this car. With all the windows down, it certainly does attract a lot of attention. So if that's your thing, an Avantime is something you could get. Lord 62 came up in 9.9 seconds for the 2-litre turbo, 8.6 seconds for the 3-litre manual, and 9.2 seconds for the 3-litre automatic. The 2-litre was only available with the manual gearbox. The automatic was the preferred choice for the 3-litre engine, so the rarest variant of all the cars is the manual V6. And of course that's the fastest. However, those figures really aren't impressive by today's standards, but you can still have a bit of fun. It doesn't handle amazingly, it is an MPV and it does weigh over 1.6 tons, but it's not too bad. It's not completely joyless through the turns. The car hasn't got too much body roll. You can place the car fairly well on the road, even on narrow lanes. You've still got a reasonable idea where that side of the car is, and it's not overly wide. Although the Avantime looks big, and it was fairly big when it came out, it's not actually that big by today's standards. It's probably about as long as something like an Astra Estate, and it's about the same width too. However, when you're driving it, it does feel like a big car. I'm sitting halfway back into the vehicle, so I can't see the front. I can see the front of the windscreen some distance away. I can't even reach the top of the windscreen, let alone get anywhere near the bit I'm looking through. And then beyond that, obviously, we've got the bonnet. Visibility in the rear, also not that great. I'm lucky I have parking sensors fitted to this car, and obviously all the 3-litre versions do, but at the back you've got a small window. Well, it's got a decent sized window, but small window of view, and obviously we've got that big sticking out bottom on the boot. Grand Air mode is really enjoyable. A lovely cool air comes in, surrounds you. You feel your uninterrupted views of the countryside. I've got open the sunroof. That does add a little bit more wind noise at these higher speeds. I'm currently doing 60 miles an hour, and it may sound really very noisy to you, I'm not sure. Obviously I can hear the cars going past, and it is noisier than having the windows down, or up rather, but you really feel a little bit more connected with the world around you. As you can see, these are quite windy bends. I'm taking them at over 50 miles an hour, but there isn't a huge amount of body roll there, so it does hold the road pretty well. For a car of this height, it's quite impressive, really. When people talk about the Avantime, something that's not very often mentioned is the interior. I've always found it to be quite different to most other cars. It's very spacious and open, but also very uncluttered. You've obviously got this wide sort of open space here, lots of big plain surfaces, and you've only got really 3 buttons in where you would normally find a whole load of them. So we've just got these 3 buttons here, which is the heated rear screen, warning lights, and a lock for the rear windows to stop the kids playing with it. Now, under here we have the stereo. You can see that on there, but over here, I'm not sure if you can see this, on the right hand side, just in front of the wiper stalk, we have a little stalk to control the radio, and it actually works really well. We've also got the climate controls over here to the right, which can only be controlled by the driver. Now the passenger does have dual zone climate control, so they can control their own temperature. The centre vents here, they only put out cold air, so whatever the temperature you've got set, you can still have air conditioned air on your face, which is quite nice, because it can get a bit stuffy when you're driving. If it's cold, you don't want the car to be putting out cold air, but you can have a nice breeze on your face. I do actually really like that. And then obviously the side vents and down here, they all do the climate control. It does mean you have to turn those off, which can be a little bit of a stretch, but I tend to leave it on just half to give me a little bit of a breeze. But it is something I really like, with so many cluttered dash designs these days, and also the screen. Obviously this predates when cars had screens, so we don't need to, we wouldn't have one anyway, but some cars do have a sat nav, and that's positioned here, but this still lifts up even if it's got the sat-nav lid there. Obviously you've got your centre display over there, which although if you're not used to a centre display you might think, oh, is that easy, but it's actually just as easy to glance at that as it is at a normal speedo directly in front of you. We've got the rev counter in here. I'm not sure if it's showing up from that position, but it's easily visible through the steering wheel. But because it's a digital one, it only indicates it's got what, 400. Well, I suppose it's every 250 RPM. I'm hoping the view you've got there, you can really get an idea of how light this car feels. You know, you're just surrounded by light. You've got light coming in from above, and with the light interior, it just feels, you know, you don't feel at all hemmed in. And it is a really pleasant place to be. One slight annoyance about the interior is that we've got a armrest here, but when it's out, so you could drive along like that if you're on the motorway. When it's out, which if you're on the motorway that would be fine. The problem is if you want to use it around town, you can't touch the handbrake, which is just well, it's not immediately below it, but just very slightly in front. But when your arm to reach it, I mean, when I'm got my hand on the handbrake, my arm is touching the front of this piece here. So if you were even taller, it'd be even more of a problem. I don't know if anyone has any issues getting the handbrake if they're taller and sitting further back. So the Avantime's 18 years old now, and cars have moved on a lot in that time. So what features does this car come with? Now the 2 litre as standard comes with dual zone climate control with air conditioning, electrically adjustable mirrors. However, only the 3 litre came with the folding mirrors as standard. You get electric lumbar support on the front seats, and the driver's seat also has electric height adjustment. Obviously you get electric windows all round and this lovely big sunroof, which at the time was the largest opening sunroof ever fitted to a car apparently. You get a CD radio as standard with, as I mentioned, controls here. You get xenon headlights as standard, which of course come with the headlight washers. 3 litre adds quite a few features that we're more used to today. A 6 CD changer, folding side mirrors, cruise control, automatic wipers, automatic dimming rear mirror, parking sensors, and heated front seats. Now, luckily, most of these options can be added to the 2 litre if you so wish, and I've got several of them on my car. I'll talk about this car in another video, so do subscribe if you're interested in the Avantime. So what's a Renault Avantime like to own? Well, obviously when you're driving it, very enjoyable driving through the countryside in the summer. It's also practical. We've got plenty of room in the boot. It rivals an estate car of the period, with the seats up, 530 litres. You can fit a full set of wheels in it. Now it's not really a 5-seater, you can get 5 people in it, it has seatbelts for 5, but the 5th person isn't going to be the most comfortable. In fact, the whole rear is not the best thought out. Unfortunately, there isn't a huge amount of legroom in the back. Although this is a very big car, inside the spaces are rather limited, particularly in the back. It doesn't cost too much to run. The fuel consumption is around in line with the official figures, because this car's from a period before they obsessed over trying to reduce the CO2 on the official figures. So the combined is around 30 mpg for the 2 litre model. I think it's around 27 for the 3 litre, and maybe a little bit less for the automatic. On a run I can get about 37 to the gallon without trying too hard. If you really push it, some people have managed 40 even in the 3 litre. Road tax is £330 a year now, which obviously is the highest band for this age, unfortunately, but it's cheaper than some of the alternatives. The Citroen C6 is in the top band and costs, I think, around 560 it is now, which is unfortunate. Reliability is something that many people worry about when they're considering a Renault Avantime, and it's something I can understand, as obviously an early 2000 Renault is not generally considered to be the most reliable purchase. However, the Renault Avantime is actually based on the Mark III Espace, which is a generation older. So that came out in 1997. The electronics that control the car are not quite as complex as those on the Laguna and the Velsatis and the Megane of the early 2000s, which did have a few issues. I'd say to anyone considering buying one, just remember that it's not a new car. It's 18 years old. If this was a Mondeo, it would be worth a few £100s and probably not be in the best running condition. Obviously Avantimes have maintained their value throughout their life to some extent, so they bottomed out about £2,000. They never really became scrappy cars, and so they are reasonably well maintained on the whole. However, as with any car that's 18 years old, rust is starting to cause its problems for certain parts. Although the chassis is galvanised, unfortunately nothing bolted to it is. So we are starting to see some of the front subframes rusting, and obviously suspension components will wear out and they will start to be coming up and being needed. I've replaced all the suspension on this car in the time I've owned it. There is actually someone who buys Avantimes and restores them by removing all the subframes and all the other metal components and getting them powder coated before selling them. He also does that as a service for anyone who owns an Avantime. So if you're worried about rust, either try and get one that's already been done or budget that in to get restored. He's on the owners club, so you'll find him quite easily. And that's another thing, the owners club, it's a really great community. Very friendly and lots of very knowledgeable people on there. The people who really, really love Avantimes and have several of them, or have had several of them. Whilst it's difficult to get many parts new, most parts can be sourced through the club second hand. And as the engines were used in many cars, not just the Avantime, engine parts are not difficult to source and are often available new. So any service items can easily be obtained. The one exception to that is I have seen recent issues with people trying to obtain a clutch. So in conclusion, I think the Renault Avantime is a really good usable classic. Obviously I'm slightly biased as I own one, but it's not too expensive. Prices start around £2,000, probably budget 3 to 4 for an average one, 5, 6, 7 for something that's quite good. The 3 litre auto is the most desirable, I think. However, you can still have a really good time with the 2 litre. As I said earlier, the performance isn't really what it's all about, so if you just want to enjoy driving the car, I don't think it matters which option you go for, but you do get more features on the 3 litre. Obviously it's practical, so it can be used to go on holiday. You can fit plenty of stuff in the boot, I often use it. In fact, it is the main car I use to go away with. It's reliable enough that you should get there and have no issues. It's never let me down. It is completely unique. I mean, unless there's someone else with one of these, you're not going to see something like it on the road. It certainly gets attention at car shows and even just driving through town. As I said at the beginning, there is no real competitor to the Avantime, and it's not a rational choice. You wouldn't buy one because it's the most practical car, you wouldn't buy one because it's the most economical car, you wouldn't buy one because it's the best handling car. You buy one for the experience of driving with all the windows down, the roof open, but then also being able to hop onto the motorway and just do a nice, quiet, relaxing drive, or because you really want to be noticed. If I'm honest, I couldn't tell you why I bought mine. I just really like it. It's just completely different. It's unusual. I don't think the Renault Avantime is ever a logical choice. It's an emotional decision. You buy it because you like it and you just want something a bit different. Very few cars are bought purely on a rational basis. There's always some emotion involved. Now, if you think the Avantime looks amazing and you love the idea of driving around in something that looks absolutely bonkers, then you should certainly consider buying one. They're not too expensive to run, they're not too expensive to buy, and they'll hold their value well. They're fairly fun to drive, and they're not really involving, but if you enjoy cruising through the countryside with the wind in your hair, it's certainly a unique experience. There's a fantastic following and a club community around them, so that's another aspect to Avantime ownership, and something that a lot of classic car owners enjoy about their cars is that community feel. But at the end of the day, it's something that's completely unique. If you like having something that no one else has, then the Avantime is something you really should consider. It really isn't too bad a choice. I've had mine for over 7 years and there hasn't been too many issues, and it hasn't cost me a fortune to run. Certainly a lot less than the depreciation or anything approaching a new car would have cost. If you're interested in owning one, then have a look at the Avantime Owners Club, because that's really the best place to start. I will be doing more videos. I'll be doing an in-depth look at what it's been like to own my car for the last 7 years, and I will also do a comprehensive buyer's guide based on the information from the club. There is already a buyer's guide on the club, but there's also some more information that I've picked up from what people have reported as common issues. So I'll go through those and actually show you what they all are and what you're looking at. So do subscribe if you're interested in owning an Avantime and what it's like, or any other cars. I also have a Multipla which I'm currently restoring, and I have another car, a Suzuki, which I run on LPG, and that's an incredibly cheap car. That is the rational choice, and I'll be doing a video on that at some point too, on how cheap that is to run. Helps me afford to run this. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like, comment below if you've got any questions at all about the Avantime, and subscribe if you do enjoy this content. Thank you very much for watching.